about passing details over to somebody else, right? And I know the Wales Audit Office and whatever the idea of managed risk, a well-managed risk, is what is going to be the harm. How are people going to feel bad about this? How do you explain to people? But this is still getting thrown up, and I think we've got a lot of work to do across in health, talking to people about how we actually start moving on and implementing this, that people want it. It's the same with sharing information in electronic records, even sometimes within health or within places, that actually if you're vulnerable, you want this done for you. It really helps you. You're at more risk if it isn't shared, and therefore you need to get on and do it.
Can I ask where are you from?
Sorry, I'm part of Community Housing Cymru. I'm with Care and Repair Cymru. So we've been working very closely with GP surgeries, and you've hit the nail on the head. We've done, I sing our praise with this, with some fantastic housing, doctor housing we call it, something in the scheme. But we've actually engaged in local projects with GPs and said, you don't have to make this your call. You just need to know who to refer to out there that can do that for you. You just need to identify. There was a scheme that went on down in Monmouthshire where the GP surgery actually agreed to give a list of all older people in a vulnerable to care and repair, that they could then contact them and say, would you like this service? And then somebody threw the data protection in. And it canned it, but it was working and it did very well.
But
so
part of, this can start coming in. We've started doing, say, like over 85 polypharmacy, we're looking at people who are especially vulnerable, and that these things start getting built in, that we actually say, if you've got this issue, that we start using communication channels out. We think about, could we add on to a repeat prescription side of the thing? Oh, if you've got an issue about your housing, whatever, go and contact this. There are ways that we could start thinking, and the route to doing this, and we are in a great position to do this in Wales, is that we do have this linked up system between general practice, between these like clusters of GPs, and our embedding, we call them neighbourhood care networks. It's meant to have a social care input. Down in Cardiff and Vale, we're talking, and a few of these groups are saying, in each practice, maybe you should have a third sector champion. So there is starting to be movement towards thinking, how do we do this and how do we get around this? And then we need to share the learning about it and tell people what's worked, how we got through these barriers.
On that point, I say there's some interesting things there. That it was Master waving at the back for Ina saying, can we, details of what you mentioned in Monmouth, can we take those and can we share them wider? So some of the things from Community Housing Cymru, can we share those much wider? Also some of the stuff you've mentioned. Just so we cover some of the interesting, that addressed one of the very questions I was going to ask Anne Marie, which was around how do GPs balance some of this, because it's I'm sure lots of GPs trained to do medical things. Suddenly there's this much sitting on their plate, and that's quite a tricky area, but we've captured some of that.
Yeah, but that's the thing, primary care isn't just GPs.
Oh no,
it's other staff, and it's not just always going to be just the doctor that's doing it, the other staff around, but it's setting it as a priority and saying that's a valuable thing for us to be doing, and that's where the leadership possibly comes from the GPs and saying that's something we're going to commit to.
And it's worthwhile saying that care and repair is across Wales. Care and repair isn't just in South Wales, it's everywhere. So every area has a care and repair service, and it is a question of connecting up.
And the importance that we're tackling private sector, which is a very difficult area to hit, especially in older people, because they don't willingly come into the services. So.
No. Just a question for Lisa. It was you mentioned things like the Quaker families doing lots of housing things in the past. Have we got things you point to in Wales as examples of housing that are good examples of where this is? The Welsh Government has done something, policy has come through, and we see stuff on the ground now that is really having an impact that's turning out areas around better health. Anything out there that you point to?
I think there's lots of housing organisations in the room today, representatives of housing organisations. The local authorities and the housing associations are doing some brilliant stuff out there. And what I'd say to the sectors, because they probably already know it, is you don't tell people enough about what you do, because actually your focus is actually on your tenants and their communities. And so many of the messages of the stuff that you're doing is brilliant, and you need to get some of that stuff out there, but you know that. And maybe the Welsh Audit Office can help with some of that as well. And you're going to hear from some of the RSLs afterwards about some of those projects, and it's just indicative of what's actually going on. So I think there's some brilliant stuff. One of the things I'd like to talk about, because I'm very proud And I would say, because it's my policy area, and it was a policy before I came into this job, it's been ongoing since 2002, is something called the Welsh Housing Quality Standard. And for me, that is a programme that we undertake with all the local housing authorities and the RSLs in Wales. And that's about improving the quality of social housing. And it's existing housing. So there's 222,000 social homes in Wales. A lot of them are ex-council houses. And they tend to house the most vulnerable people in our society. And back in 1999 or something, somebody in the room might be able to tell me something a bit different, there were some surveys undertaken about the quality of housing in Wales, and what came out was the standard of council housing at that stage was absolutely shocking. The legends of deprivation in those houses was terrible. And you know, you could point the finger at local authorities and say, well, it was your fault, but actually the truth is that under a previous Conservative administration, the rental income wasn't allowed to be plugged back into the improvement of houses. It had to go off paying local authority debt. And the impact, you know, talking about, you know, bad policy decisions for potentially good reasons, I would have said is absolutely one of those, because without the investment in the stock went down. And, you know, what was happening in people's homes was terrible. You know, black mold, no inside toilets, you know, all the sort of stuff that the Quaker families were tackling 100 years before, you know, really very shocking. So since 2000, or in 2001, there was a huge amount of work done, collaborative working, perhaps in the days before it would even have been called co-production. You know, where all the key organisations around Wales, from health through to housing, through to social care, came together and sort of said, well, what are we going to do about this? And out of it came the standard. And since then, Welsh Government and the housing organisations that still have their housing stock have been ploughing huge amounts of money into the improvement of social housing. So Welsh Government, since 2002, has been putting in £108 million a year of capital investment. And out of that, on average, comes 5 times that level of investment from the councils who still have their stock and the RSLs. And despite the recession since 2007, that money has never changed from the Welsh Government. You know, and believe me, you know, you have to have a committed cabinet, but more importantly, you also have to have committed other political parties who understand the connection between housing and health. That money, that annual budget of £108 million is never challenged, ever, despite the difficulties with capital expenditure. And for me, what that says is that people instinctively understand the connection between housing and health, about the importance of actually having people who can live in decent quality homes. And this is not, you know, I've heard it said before, oh yeah, this is gold standard, you know, why should people live in gold standard accommodation? This is not gold standard. This is the stuff that really makes a difference to people's lives. This is about having a roof that doesn't leak. It's about having doors and windows that are secure and don't let out lots of expensive energy. It's about energy efficient boilers. You know, one of the things that we're most proud of is that since 2002, we've had an energy rating around this housing stock. And, you know, if you can imagine, you know what Welsh housing stock is like. It's old, you know, and they can be leaky buckets and they can be expensive to run. But the SAP rating that they have to meet since 2002 has been SAP 65 or greater. If you go into a shop to buy a new fridge or freezer, you've got the ratings. Yeah, everybody understands the ratings. SAP 65 is C or above. You know, that's 12 years that's been there. This is good stuff. So the bottom line is we've got about 64. All the housing has to meet the standard by 2020. A lot of them already have, and importantly, it's got to be maintained afterwards. This isn't a one-off investment. This has got to continue. 64%. The RSLs are higher. Local authorities are, for all sorts of reasons, are a bit slower start. Sorry, housing associations.
Registered social
landlords. Yeah, sorry, I'm glad that Bauer are in the room. Thank goodness for that. You know, we will meet WHQS by 2020.
Can I ask, is that how it feels out there? This is 108 million a year since 2002 going into this. 5 times social housing, 4 times the you're talking 450 million a year to improve. Is that how it feels on the ground? People who work in housing, people who work out in communities, do they see the housing stock getting better? nods and nods. No one wants to come to
Thank
that.
God for that. Yes, the Welsh Orchard office is going to have a lot to find where it's gone.
We can take that one off our list. That's okay then. Yeah, sorry.
Talking about sort of warmth, I mean, one simple local example is I'm on the group board, the Sarah Group, and one of the organisations is the Derwent Housing Association, and it's heavily into solar panels. It's got a subsidiary. Now, it seems to me that that's one way of actually having a practical benefit for the tenant and the landlord, and you've automatically got energy on the agenda, so it's not as intrusive as your GP just by divulging information about you to somebody else, which not all of us aging people are necessarily over the moon about in all circumstances. Although I do appreciate it for kind of extremely vulnerable people a lot of the time. So that's what. The other thing I would say on a more problematical thing, which is not my immediate concern in the housing association, is of course we have got big expansion of the private rented sector, and I know the Welsh Government has been doing things, very good things, that haven't been happening to the same extent elsewhere, to make private sector landlords raise their game, because you've got to look at the totality of housing.
Yeah, well, the current thing is, I think that social housing accounts about 17%, and I think it's the same amount going into the private rented sector, but it's increasing. But the large proportion of the problems, if you like, about the quality of the housing is actually in the private sector. And that's why, you know, the work that the care agencies do. So as you can see, I'm passionate about this, and actually I think that, you know, you have to set a standard. Welsh Government has to set a standard, and it has to be very clear with the RSLs, the housing associations, local authorities, that that standard must be met. And just as a final indicator, this has been done voluntarily, actually, for 12, 13, 14 years. All right, you can say that we make, if you get Welsh Government money, then you dance to its tune, and that's been part of it. But last year, Wales had its first housing act, its first housing bill, and one of the parts of that was tackling homelessness, it was tackling all sorts of things. Part 4 is actually about the quality of people's homes. And it actually says to the landlords who are getting on money, if you don't build quality housing, if you don't meet this standard, you know, there will be sanctions. We will come and do something about that. Because actually, as the years go by, and the level of investment sort of drops overall, it becomes increasingly important that unless you get a standard of things right, you're going to build up a whole set of problems for the government.
I think there's a fundamental, I mean, and you just kind of brought it back up there again. There's a fundamental kind of question about do you target initiatives, and that's an exercise or housing or anything, of people that have problems and health problems and try and move them on, which is where you do need very definitely kind of, because you're not going to be able to tell which house has got somebody that's got heart disease in it, or you might know their age probably, but you're not know these other things. Or do you have an exercise referral scheme that's just for people that have these problems? So do you target it, or do you have an open population sort of approach and you say, in general, we're going to get housing kind of up. So everybody, we're going to be thinking about solar panels and doing this. And we're going to really increase the exercise and whatever of the population so that everybody will be encouraged to do this. We'll set up initiatives. You can self-refer in, and we might make a special effort to get people of certain groups. But I think that's where we're sort of struggling on which approach is it that we're actually taking. What is it that overall is going to give us the biggest sort of bang for our buck? Is it chasing people and targeting them? Or, because in general we know that to improve health, you do need a population approach. That what you need to do is not just go above a certain cut line and try and move people up, like a normal distribution, try and move those people, but to shift the distribution so that you're moving the average amount of exercise up, the average quality of housing up, rather than trying to do it in individuals, because those people are going to move around in different houses and all the rest of it. And I'm not sure in Wales in general, where are we at with that? What are we thinking is the best way forward?
I mean, from our point of view on housing, the attitude that we take, let me just sort of say, maybe I should have said this up front, you know, this is not about bathrooms, kitchens, boilers, roofs, windows, it's about people. This is fundamentally about people. That's why Welsh Government invest in this. You know, it's, you know, and the problem is, as policymakers and the sector, we talk about, you know, when we come out and we do all the monitoring visits and say, how many kitchens have you finished, how many bathrooms have you sorted, how many boilers have you put in? But what sits behind that is about people. You know, and actually, if you want to target this, and sorry, what I was going to say was, those houses are not there for 10 years or 15 years. Those houses And the Welsh houses have lives already of 100 years plus. So the investment in that house is an investment in families, it's investment in the long term. So you're right, it is a bit of a challenge about sort of saying, well, do we just target some houses? Do we pepper pot where people need that need now? And you have to do some of that. You definitely have to sort some problems now. But the challenge of policy making, certainly for Welsh Government, is you think the long-term stuff as well, the future generations. Where do you make the investment? You have to do some things now, but you have to do this, and you have to keep this level of investment going if you want to prevent the problems happening in the first place.
That point about longer term stuff,
Yeah.
benefits that are being felt in other areas, this is about this the collaboration or working with others. It was mentioned earlier about in that territory. Big challenge, you can say, you depend on other people to do things forward it. Just Anne Marie first, you sit out in Gethry, lots of different people involved in the primary sector delivering. Some examples, what are the challenges of getting things to work on the front line when there are multiple agencies from different directions? How does it work?
Yeah, I mean, I think the question over the passing over information to somebody else has come up. We actually do around, say, even doing exercise referrals, and you have to get a signature from patients in your referral on the form to refer it outside, because it's going outside the organisation. But then I spoke to somebody and said, well, we don't really need that, but we would prefer that you have it. So usually if I'm referring within sector, no need for something like that. People try, there's like extra levels whenever you go to doing collaboration. Now, a way that this works well is that about 12 years ago in our practice, we started a citizens' advice come into the practice. They come in twice a month, and they have a slot that of clinic that I book in appointments, and I can book somebody in there. So that information is staying completely within our system. But the citizens' advice phone up and say, do you have any? Is there going to be anybody there next Tuesday? There is. Okay, I'll come along and we'll see it. So we're not actually passing information outside until the person turns up and they speak to the person. It's on our premises and it works that way. So we put no barriers. Now that has good uptake from us because we understand how that works. And we were sort of talking about, well, could you do that model with other ways that you would have other support groups and whatever coming into practice, and then you build up the relationship and you're able to do it. You've got round these things, but I think it is actually these very practical things about doing that. We all are pretty much on the same page, I think, more or less, of understanding why we believe that this is actually a good thing to do, but people don't want to have lots and lots of hoops to jump through to be able to initiate it, because everybody feels, if it's more complicated for me to refer somebody to an exercise referral scheme or a service in an outside sector, if it's a lot more hoops for me to jump through to do that than there is for me to refer them to a surgeon, then that feels difficult. And I think, you have to realise that where that's coming from. So we want to make those processes as simple as possible.
So very practically, within your surgery, you've got Citizens Advice Bureau who sit within the surgery,
yeah.
and it's some of that linking up by bringing them in. And we hear it, the Lighthouse project for Mark from TAF will talk about later, that housing people going to local hospital. Yeah. So examples, so there are people out there. Some of this about these very practical things. Part of today is to try to capture some of those, to try and share some out. I think Roy was going to mention.
So I was just going to ask a question.
Yes.
I mean, this thing about passing information to other organisations to help the service user of the patient. Can that not be overcome by the signing of a disclaimer? Your information may be shared with X, Y, and Z. Are you agreeable? Yes.
It could be. I think that if you want to be effective and efficient, first of all, then you want to make sure that people are reasonably on board with it the first time, rather than you chasing up. So that even for like smoking cessation services, I would say, this person's coming into the practice. Whenever you're happy with that, if you're getting contact by them, that's what it's going to be about. But rather than have things in triplicate, sign 3 signatures, it might be over the phone that I speak to somebody and say, would that be okay? Or somebody from practice says, would that be okay? Yes, we've got verbal consent, that's legitimate, that's enough, and there we go. That's enough for us to feel that it's okay. That's what we would have in general, rather than somebody else insist on multiple kind of signatures to say that we've done that right. So I think it's just, that's what I mean about the well-managed risk. It's about thinking, what's a good enough standard to make sure that we're happy and comfortable
This
with?
information is a big tricky area.
But you can see already in the room, you've got, is a disclaimer okay? Yeah, you're right that we're used online signing up to things where it says, we read these terms and conditions, nobody really knows what it is. And we don't trust that really, do we? But actually, my work is based on people having trust with me.
You're a professional.
I'm a professional, my work, I'm able to do my job because the people that come in through the door trust me. And I can't rely on some kind of like disclaimer which would reduce that level of trust, because it's not the same as me sort of thinking, well, I get whatever I get out of Facebook because I know that they're messing me around, whatever, but it's okay. I don't think we might have to get to that stage in 5 or 10 years' time, but at the moment that's not the way we operate.
I'm just checking, how much time have we got left, Ina? It's coming up to 1:30, so we can...
7 minutes.
7 minutes, so we've got a bit of time. Are you okay? Sorry. Are you okay? I just might cut his hand up. Did you want to ask a question?
Yeah, well, it was an observation really, which was more that it's about what we really need to start thinking seriously about what putting the citizen at the centre means.
Yeah.
You know, and I think, you know, listening to this, if you make it difficult for professionals and you make it difficult for individuals, you are going to get this kind of stuff. And we really need to move from the rhetoric to actually saying, okay, if we are serious about putting this citizen at the centre, what does that mean for all the systems and processes we've got, and how do we need to start changing them? And the reason I say that is because listening to this took me back to 1990, I'm afraid, when the floods happened on the northwest coast, and I had a kind of and there was a kind of physical representation of this, that the people who had just lost their homes and everything were literally being passed from pillar to post. They were in rescue centres, they'd lost everything, and they were being sent to Rill to see the DHSS, as they were at that time, Social Security. They were having to go somewhere else to see, for medical attention, they had to go somewhere else then for financial social services system. And what we did then was, for a limited period of time, we brought them all together into a one-stop shop.
It's funny, a crisis. If you're
Yeah.
in crisis,
So
can we do it every day?
And the reason for all that was, all that time again, it was data sharing. None of those agencies could share anything, any details, even though these people were in crisis. And I think, that's 25 years ago. And how much have we moved on?
Can I just take that question to Lisa? About in this area of how, when Mike said putting citizens at the centre, you mentioned earlier about as policy, and people who get Welsh Government money, there's a requirement to do certain things. They're about, some of it's about the physical standard of what they create. Is there any opportunity amongst the world of policy to say, if people are getting government money, they have to do these things around putting citizens at the centre? Is that an achievable thing, or I'm asking a daft question?
I think it's absolutely fundamental.
Yeah.
Again, I refer to the housing organisations in here. We give out a lot of money, we give out a lot of money, they give out a lot of money, they give out a lot more than we do. They use our money to create, get more change. But one of the things that the Welsh Government has said to local authorities, and we've also asked the housing associations to do as well, is to say, okay, you're spending very large sums of capital money, and we want more for that. We're not just prepared for this to go into the rooms, the kitchens, the bathrooms, all the rest of it. What we say is, what our government says is, and for that money, you have to get additional things. And that means when you give those contracts, you get community benefits. And that can be everything from saying to the person who gets the contract to fit the roofs, the kitchens, or whatever. For every £1 million, we want you to create at least one job in that community. And it actually has to be in that community. And for the housing associations and local authorities, that makes perfect sense. Because actually what they are trying to do by the investment of that housing, which their cabinets and their boards have agreed, is to make things better. So actually what we get out of that is huge amounts of community benefits in Wales. Welsh Government has got something called the Value Wells Toolkit, which has been Jane Hutt's baby, the Finance Minister's baby, and we try and capture that data. Now the housing organisations have been doing the community benefit stuff for a lot longer than the Value Wells tool has been around. And we know there's some excellent practice going on out there. But what it means is that kids who otherwise wouldn't get apprenticeships, will be taken on by the people who are actually putting the kitchens in, or the bathrooms, or whatever else. But it's also the soft benefits as well. It isn't just the hard-edged jobs and training opportunities. It can be about, and you can ask some of the housing associations, local authorities, what else they
And,
get.
I'm just conscious of the time. I've been given 2 minutes. Right, ask 2 questions to each of you. I'll go, Anne Marie, if this was magic wand, you were queen for the day, and you could change anything, what would be the one thing you would do to this link between health, well-being, physical activity?
Well, after your comment, it's actually crystallised to me, and I'm also kind of organised a thing called NHS Hack Day, which is about trying to get technological solutions to problems and whatever. The thing is, this personal data and being able to share it and having really transparent systems where you could actually do that. We're moving in a way thinking on health that maybe the patient, if we move to a time of thinking you own your records, that we actually would think that you would also, maybe at that time we should be thinking and planning. Could we also have integrated that you own your records about your housing, that you own your records about all the other interactions you have with the public sector, and that you could then be sort of doing that, or delegate permission for somebody else to share it. I'm thinking that would be
This is
what I would
nothing but
like.
aspirational.
This
This is good.
exactly.
I know, if you could change anything, fantastic. So that's interesting. Good, yeah, that's interesting. So change personal data sharing. Lisa, what you could be queen for the day, what could you change?
I wear a housing standards hat, and I'm going to try. I can't do it immediately, but I think for me, we were talking earlier on about policy making, and for me, there's 2 types of policy making. There's the policy making where you stick your finger in the dam because you need to sort out a problem. Now the dam is leaking, what are you going to do? You stick your finger in it. So you've got to make policy that addresses those problems. We'll talk about some of this. But the best type of policy making is when you sort of recognise that you've got to do something to repair the dam, and that's sort the problem out up there to stop the problem occurring, because you've got to get rid of the water in the dam before you can repair it. So for me, an example of that I'd really like to do is to change the type of housing we build in Wales. And for me, that's actually about, it is absolutely possible, they've been doing it in Germany for 30 years, to build houses that cost 50 quid a year to run. And if somebody, would anybody in this room like it? Put your hands up. Who would like a house that costs 50 quid a year to run? Yeah. And it's doable, and it's absolutely possible. And what we need to do is to work with the sector here and others to make sure we do that, because it is entirely doable to build those type of houses. And those houses are also sustainable houses that are resilient to climate change and all the rest of it.
And on that point, I say 2 very clear, very tough targets, but say things that
the sector have to do it, not me.
Okay, can I just say thank you very much and say, could we thank you?